A widow was stranded on a desolate road in a storm, her phone dead. A veteran farmer landed his old plane to help. That act of mercy drew military attention, and by morning, his small hangar was surrounded by helicopters with stunning news. Hi everyone, welcome to Life Unveiled. Let's get started. Bill Thompson lived on the edge of a small town in a valley ringed by endless fields of wheat and corn that swayed like a golden sea under the wind. At 62, he'd spent most of his life aloft, piloting an old yellow Piper Cub he'd bought in his youth with his last savings. A Vietnam War veteran, he'd served as a mechanic in the Air Force, fixing helicopters amid the roar of artillery, accustomed to the smell of engine oil and the echoes of combat that still lingered in his dreams. Tall, with a stooped back and grey hair peeking from under a weathered cap, he looked like a man shaped but not broken by time. His face bore wrinkles like a map of roads travelled, and his faded blue eyes held a calm depth. Bill didn't chase grand dreams. His farm, his plane, and quiet sunsets over the fields were enough. He'd loved flying since boyhood, inspired by his father, a cargo pilot who taught him the ropes in a tiny village where they'd lived before the war. His father had dreamed of him joining military aviation, and Bill once shared that vision of soaring in jets, but life had other plans. After his parents fell ill, he returned to the farm to keep it going, swapping sky-high ambitions for low flights over crops, dusting fields to save harvests from pests. He found purpose in it, being part of a small world where everyone relied on each other. Neighbours knew if a storm or blight threatened, Bill would take to the air when others stayed grounded. He never complained, embracing his role with quiet pride, though sometimes, hearing the rumble of military planes overhead, he'd pause and look up, catching a flicker of the life that might have been. His home was modest, a single-story house with peeling paint flanked by barns and an old hangar where the Piper rested. Inside it smelled of wood and coffee, with yellowed photos on the walls. Bill in uniform, his father by a plane, sunsets over fields. He'd lived alone since his wife passed 5 years ago, but his sister Linda, a short woman with kind eyes and a habit of humming old tunes, often visited, bringing pie or just company. Bill cherished these moments, finding comfort he didn't seek in the town's noisy bars or bustle. Kate Morgan lived in the town proper, in a small house with cracked shingles and a garden of dandelions and a few wilted roses. In her 70s, she carried her years with dignity despite the loneliness since her husband's death after 40 years together. Her grey hair was pinned in a neat bun, and her blue eyes still sparked with resolve that had seen her through tough times. A retired school librarian, Kate had spent her life helping kids find books and solace in stories. She loved her town, its quiet streets and friendly faces, but that evening, she was in trouble. Her old sedan, a relic from her husband, died on a lonely road miles from home as a storm gathered over the valley. Her phone was dead, rain lashed the windows, and her headlights flickered faintly, lost in the encroaching dark. Kate stood by the car, shivering in the wind, clutching a soaked scarf, peering into the gloom for any sign of help. That late August evening, Bill was finishing his last dusting run. Black clouds rolled in faster than forecast, lightning flashing on the horizon with an ominous glow. He was guiding his Piper toward the hangar, feeling the wind buffet the wings, when he spotted a faint light below. Squinting, he saw a car on the roadside and a figure waving something white, a scarf or cloth. Bill banked for a better look. The field nearby was uneven, slick with mud, but he'd landed in worse during spring floods. His radio crackled with his friend Ted's voice, monitoring flights from the ground. "Bill, storm's closing in, get down," said Ted. "Someone's stranded down there, Ted. I'm setting her down," replied Bill, gripping the yoke. The landing was rough, wet grass sent the plane skidding, but Bill steadied it, shutting off the engine with practiced ease. Climbing out, he pulled his hood tight and ran toward the car as wind whipped his clothes. Up close, he saw an elderly woman shielding herself with a drenched cardigan, her face pale, but her eyes a mix of fear and grit. "Ma'am, you can't stay out here," he shouted over the storm. Kate looked at him with relief tinged with embarrassment. "My GPS led me here, then the car quit." I was heading to my son's base for his ceremony. Thunder drowned her last words, but Bill got the gist. The storm wouldn't wait. Base is an hour off, and this weather's only worsening. Grab your stuff, we'll head to my farm and figure it out. He helped her snag a bag and her useless phone, and they piled into his old pickup, the cab smelling of gas and leather. The drive was quiet, save for rain pounding the roof. Headlights carving through the dark, past sodden trees. Kate explained her son, David Morgan, was getting promoted to colonel at a nearby base. She mentioned how he'd saved a downed helicopter crew last year, a story Bill dimly recalled from the papers. He listened silently, but something stirred inside. He knew what it meant to risk for others, remembered patching machines under fire to save his squad. At the farm, Linda took over, handing Kate dry clothes and a mug of tea as she warmed by the creaky wood stove in the corner. Bill checked the radar on his ancient computer. The storm would clear by dawn. At first light, I'll fly you closer to the base. Jackson's got a strip nearby. We'll get help there, he said, glancing at Kate over his coffee mug. She nodded, cradling her tea gratefully, unaware this plan would upend a humble farmer's life. Morning broke clear after the storm, the air fresh and fields gleaming with dew. Bill was at the plane before sunrise, checking the landing gear and wings with his usual care. He walked the yellow fuselage, tapped the metal for sound, and peered into the engine like it was an old friend. Kate stood by, wrapped in Linda's old coat, watching. "You take good care of it," she noted, her voice soft but curious. Bill grinned, patting the wing. "Old-timers like this stay loyal if you don't let 'em down. She's flown me through storms others wouldn't touch." Linda rushed from the house, waving a phone. "Bill, signal's back. The base is in a panic. Colonel Morgan's mom didn't show for the ceremony." Bill froze, turning to Kate. "Your son's that Morgan? Read about him. Saved those boys under fire." Kate beamed. "Yes, my David. Always stubborn but good." "Then we're flying, ma'am. He needs to see you," Bill said, helping her into the cramped cockpit. Takeoff was smooth, the Piper lifting over the fields as Bill flew low, tracing familiar contours. Kate peered out, pointing at landmarks below, an old barn, a glinting creek. They were 20 minutes from Jackson's strip when the radio hissed. "Unidentified craft nearing restricted zone. Identify yourself." Bill grabbed the mic. "Valley Farmer, on a Mercy flight." Before he finished, a dark shape streaked by, a MiG-29 fighter, followed by another. They circled close, wings glinting in the sun, and Bill's heart skipped. He'd never seen anything like it in all his years aloft. The radio barked again. Stern. "Piper N456, you're in restricted airspace. Alter course." Kate snatched the headset. "This is Catherine Morgan. Is my son stirring up trouble again?" After a pause, the voice softened. "Mum, it's you?" What followed felt like a dream. The fighters couldn't match the Piper's slow pace, but escorted it, guiding him to the base like an honor guard. Bill watched them, recalling boyhood dreams of such planes, now dwarfing his humble craft. On the runway waited a crowd, an honor guard, officers, and a tall man in a colonel's uniform, David Morgan. Bill landed, hands trembling slightly, but set the Piper down perfectly, rolling to a stop under dozens of eyes. David helped his mother out, hugging her tight. "Mom, we were losing our minds." Then he turned to Bill. "Sir, thank you. That was ace flying for a farmer." A MiG pilot, helmet off, added, "Colonel, you should have seen him in that wind. Pure skill." Bill rubbed his neck, grinning. "Dodging silo towers teaches you a thing or two." Laughter eased the moment. And suddenly Bill wasn't just a farmer in a worn jacket. He was a pilot among pilots. They invited him to the ceremony, seating him with honor as David got his new insignia. For the first time, his yellow Piper stood beside military machines, a humble farmer, part of something grand. The best moment came when David showed him a MiG cockpit. "Mr. Thompson, with your skill, you could dust half the valley in this." Bill chuckled. "Maybe, but my old girl doesn't need all that paperwork to refuel." Now, Bill flies over the valley fields, his grandkids begging for the tale of how their grandpa flew with fighters. Photos on his wall capture it, a yellow speck amid war machines, a moment when kindness sparked a marvel. Kate shares her version with her grandkids too. But for her, it's about Bill, a man who didn't pass by a stranger's need. In a world asking, "What's in it for me?" Bill asked, "How can I help?" she says, pride in her voice for the man who briefly joined her family on an incredible day. Bill's story teaches that a small act can stir a storm of events, and humility doesn't dim greatness. Life tests us, but rewards those who lift others, even unwittingly.
If you enjoyed this story, drop a like and subscribe for more tales like this. Hit the bell, and we'll catch you in the next one.